Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Hi.
Lynna.
Hi, Sabrina. Hi, Kailani. Hi, Gianna. Hi, Shamane. Hi, Coda. Hey, Ella. Hi, McKenna. Am I shouting? Okay. Hi, Zoe. Good to see you back. Oh no, you're Avery. You're. I know you're Avery, but your screen name says Zoe. Do you want to change that? Hi, Griffin. Hey, Rosa. Hey, Sonia.
Hi.
Hi. Hey, Corbin. Hey, Jane. Jane's here.
Yes.
Hi, Jane. Hi. Is Asher joining you today? I've missed you.
No. Yes.
Just
no,
you.
I'm on my own. Yeah. I look at the recipes. I'm like, you guys into it? And then they're like, yes, no, yes, no. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
on
they're
my
into
own.
this one. This is good.
Yes. But is it super spicy, or I can just cut the harissa down,
You can,
right?
yeah, you can cut the harissa.
Okay.
You should taste the harissa first. Just taste a little dab of it, and then based on how spicy it is, adjust accordingly.
Okay, great. School tomorrow. Oh my gosh.
I know. Hi, Sharon. Hi, Edie. Great to see you. Hey, Cam. Hi. Hey, Leilani. Hi. I'm going to do a bit of a bait and switch today because I'm just here to say hi, but I'm going to step away so that my really good friend Melissa, who many of you know, can teach you guys. Hey, Natalie. Natalie, did you get a haircut? You're muted, Natalie. Did you get a haircut? Oh, it's very cute. It reminds me of your mom's haircut.
Thank you.
Did your mom cut it for you?
We had a family friend cut it.
Oh, nice. Cool. Hello. Melissa, your friends have joined. Okay. So it's 5:02. We're going to get started pretty soon. I'm going to step away from the camera in just a second. But let me just wait another minute to make sure everyone's on. Hello, welcome. I know you see my face right now, but it's not going to be me. Melissa's going to be here in just a second. She's standing next to me, but we're socially distanced. We're physically distanced. So that's why you just see me. Otherwise, she'd be right next to me, but she'll be in the back. She's coming behind me. That's Melissa. Do you see? Hi, everyone see Melissa? Cool. All right. So I'm going to pass everything over to her. I'm going to be in the background cooking alongside you. So I'm going to be cooking with Melissa also. But I want you to do the same things that you do with me. If you have any questions, you can either chat your question or you can just shout out. I have 2 executive producers today, Olivia Lee and Clara, and they'll be able to let Melissa know if you have a question, you need her to stop and ask and answer any questions you have. All right. So I think people are pretty. Okay. So let's oh, one more person. Right.
Okay. Hi, guys. Hopefully you can hear me. Executive producers, can they hear me? Okay, so welcome everybody. Some of you know me, some of you don't. Hi, Corbin. Hey, who else do I see? Rosa, Sonia. Evie and Christy, hi. There's Jasper and LD. Who else do I know? Anyway, so to those that don't know me, I have a strange accent. As you can tell, I'm from England originally. So if I use a weird word or you can't understand me, please ask a question or tell me to slow down. I've not done this before. And Lynna is such an amazing teacher that I know she's a hard act to follow, but I will do my best. I will tell all of you that my daughter Olivia, who's going into 8th grade at UMing, did an online cooking class for a week, which we paid quite a lot of money for. And Lynna was so much the better teacher. She was such a good teacher compared to this cooking course that we paid for. So we're all very lucky to have amazing Lynna teaching us how to cook. Okay, so we're going to start with, first thing just to check, has everybody preheated their oven to 425? If you haven't, don't worry, just make sure your oven is on right now at 425. So give everyone a second just to check your oven is on at 425. Are we good? Okay, so now the first thing we're going to do is make the marinade for the chicken and the potatoes that are going in the oven. So what you want to do is get yourself a big bowl, a bowl that is big enough to hold your chicken thighs and your potatoes, because we're going to be putting everything in there. And then just make sure that the bowl that you start with is big enough for your chicken and your potatoes. Okay, so first of all, first thing we're going to do is we're going to make the marinade. We're going to put that in the bowl first. So what you want to do is get yourself your big bowl and just put it in front of you. And the first thing we're going to add is the harissa. So I'm going to talk to you a little about the harissa. So harissa is a chili paste. And this one, this is the Trader Joe's one, and it says Tunisian harissa. Now, what I've learned, I've made this dish, I don't know, 10 times, and I've made it with about 6 different kinds of harissa. And all the harissas I've used are totally different. Although they're all called harissa, some are really, really spicy and some are super mild. You can also use any chili paste like piri piri or Korean chili paste or any kind of chili paste that you want. You can also use harissa powder, which you just mix with a little bit of oil to make it into a paste. So what everybody, I'm using the Trader Joe's harissa, and I tasted this, and what everyone to do is get their harissa and just taste a tiny bit, just put it on your tongue and see how spicy it is. Now this one is super spicy. It's much spicier than the one I normally use. So if everyone tastes your harissa and just see how spicy it is. And then if it tastes really spicy, you're only going to put half in. So normally I would put 2 tablespoons of harissa. I'm only going to put 1 tablespoon of this one because it's really spicy. But again, if you like really spicy food, go ahead and put in 2 tablespoons. If you don't like any spice, you can put in like half a teaspoon just to get a little bit of flavor. So like all recipes in cooking, once you made it once, you can tweak it to make it how you like it. So just you decide how spicy you want this to be. So first thing I'm going to do is put in, the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of harissa. So if you like it really spicy, put in 2 tablespoons. If your harissa is quite mild, put in 2 tablespoons. I'm going to put in 1 just because this is the one that I'm using, or maybe 1 and a bit, because this one that I'm using is much spicier than the one I normally have. So we're going to put that in first. Then you're going to put, so you've got your harissa in there, and then you're going to put 3 tablespoons of olive oil. And you don't need to use really good olive oil for this. You can just use kind of cooking extra virgin oil. You can save the really good olive oil if you have that to make the vinaigrette. Because this is going to be cooked with, you don't want to waste expensive olive oil when you're making a marinade. So I'm going to put 3 generous tablespoons of olive oil. So you can put in a little bit more. Again, this kind of thing, it doesn't have to be exact. So I've just added 3 tablespoons of olive oil with a harissa. Let me put that in. So everyone, if I'm going too fast, let me know. And then after that, we're going to add 3 teaspoons of salt. Now I'm using kosher salt. If you're using table salt, like really fine table salt, just use 2 teaspoons because that's stronger. But if you're using kosher salt, 3 teaspoons of salt. But again, this is to taste. I like things quite salty. If you don't, and if you're trying to cut back on salt, just 2 teaspoons is fine. So but I'm going to add 3 teaspoons of kosher salt. So 1, 2, 3. Okay. And then the next thing you're going to add is about half a teaspoon of black pepper. I'm not going to measure this out. I'm just going to grind this in to about half a teaspoon. And again, this is to taste. So if you like black pepper, put more. You've already got the spice from the harissa. But if you're not using harissa, maybe put in more black pepper because that's going to give you a little bit of spice. All right. I can't hear any questions. Should I be able to hear people? Huh? Oh, can they?
How much olive oil?
How much olive oil? Okay, olive oil is 3 tablespoons. 3 tablespoons. Okay, so in here so far we've got 1 or 2 tablespoons of harissa, depending on how spicy it is, 3 tablespoons of olive oil, 3 teaspoons of salt, and about half a teaspoon of black pepper. And then the last thing we're going to put in here is about half a teaspoon of cumin. So you want your ground cumin. And I'm sure Lynna's already talked to you about this, but when you're using dried ground herbs like this, you want them to be really fresh, because if they've been in your cupboard for more than about 2 months, they're going to lose all their flavor. And ideally what you want to do is if you're cooking a lot, is to buy a little spice grinder and grind your spices fresh, because then the flavor is much better. So you get cumin seeds and you grind them up fresh, like once a month. So the cumin is about half a teaspoon. I'm going to put a little bit more than that because I like the flavor. So that just goes in there. Okay. And then do I have a whisk, Lynna? Okay, we're just going to whisk all this up together. 1 second. Thank you. Okay, so you want to get your marinade and just whisk it all together. And it's going to be kind of chunky like that. Can you see? It's all right. So that's your marinade. And now we're going to add the potatoes and the chicken to this. And then we're going to put it all in the oven. So the first thing, I'm going to get just going to move that out of the way for a second. I'm going to get my chicken. Now, you should, hopefully, if you all have bone-in chicken thighs, that's the thighs with the bone. The reason for that is if you use boneless chicken thighs, they cook much quicker, and they're going to be cooked before the potatoes are ready. So that's why we're using bone-in. The other reason to use bone-in is that there's a lot more flavor in bone-in chicken thighs than the ones without the bone. So the important thing is that when you're doing a sheet pan recipe like this, where you're cooking everything together, you have to make sure that the ingredients you're using cook at the same time. Otherwise, one thing is going to be overcooked before the other item is cooked. So, and the other thing about chicken thighs is they vary in size. Mine, I would say, are on the large size, because sometimes you can get, let me see if there's a bigger one. You could have a chicken thigh that's really big like that. This one's a little smaller. So we're gonna, when we test for the temperature of the chicken to see if it's cooked, we're gonna test the biggest one to make sure that the biggest one is cooked. But the good thing also about bone-in chicken thighs is that they're pretty forgiving, so you can overcook the small ones a little bit and they're still not gonna dry out, so it's not a problem. And the other thing you can do with chicken thighs, depending on how healthy, if you're kind of wanting to be healthier, if they have a lot of extra skin and fat, you can trim that off if you want to, but you don't have to, because the fat from the chicken kind of melts into the potatoes and gives the potatoes a nice flavor. But I'm going to show you as an example. Say this one here, I'll just do one so you can see it, but you totally don't have to do this. You see this one here has this extra skin and it has some extra fat here. So you can, if you want to be healthy, you can get your scissors and just cut the extra skin off just from the side. But you don't have to do this. This is just, so you've still got skin on the top, but you're just cutting a little bit extra off, but you don't have to do that, so don't worry about that. So we're gonna get our chicken and we're just gonna throw that into the marinade. So just get your chicken. Do you have a question? Okay, and sorry, I'm gonna put this back here. So we're just gonna put all the chicken. and just so you know, some people, there's a big debate amongst chefs about whether you should wash chicken before you cook it. I'm on the side of not washing it, because the issue is when you wash chicken, you end up getting raw chicken germs all over your sink and all over the area where you're drying it, which ends up spreading around the raw chicken germs more than not washing it. So I took these out of the packages earlier and I just dried them with paper towels, because any germs that are in raw chicken are obviously going to get cooked out when you're roasting it. So you don't need to worry about that too much. But the important thing is, after you've touched raw chicken, is you must wash your hands straight away. So I've put my chicken in there, and I'm now going to wash my hands to get rid of the raw chicken germs on my hands. So if everyone wants to put their chicken in the bowl and then wash your hands. Is everybody up to that bit? So everyone got their chicken in the marinade? Yes? So we're not going to stir it yet, because we're going to add the potatoes and then we're going to stir it all together. So next we're going to get our potatoes. And again, the key with when you're doing a sheet pan recipe like this, cooking everything together, is to make sure that your potatoes are all about the same size. Because if you have one huge one and one tiny one, obviously the big one is not going to be cooked when the small one is cooked. So when I bought these potatoes, I tried to get most of them about the same size. But again, if you have a huge potato like this size, like the size of my lemon, you can just cut that into 4 pieces. You don't need to peel them unless if you've got these kind of small potatoes with the thin skins, you don't need to peel them because we're roasting them whole. But let me see, I have most of these ones I have here are about the same size. So I'm just going to throw them in the bowl. And this is about the size that you want. You see the size on my hand. It's probably about 1 inch diameter, maybe a little bit more. And that's going to be about the right size to cook at the same time as the chicken thighs. So I'm going to throw all my little ones in there. And if I see any big ones, I'm going to cut them in half. Most of these are about the right. How much chicken? Okay, so chicken, I have, let me see, I think I had 6 to 8 chicken thighs. So again, this recipe is fairly flexible. 6 to 8 thighs is fine, or not. If you don't want to go much more than that. If you go more than 8, you just need to increase the amount of marinade. But 6 to 8, it should be good. So I'm going to keep putting my potatoes in. Now this one here, you see, this potato is bigger. You see? Oh, have I lost you? The cutting board? Oh, I don't see it here. Sorry, technical problem. I don't see my cutting board here anymore. 1 second. Sorry, guys. Can you guys see the cutting board?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, great. I just can't see it. That's fine. So with these potatoes, I'm just going to cut this one in half. So then I've got more or less the same size. So that's your goal with your potatoes, is just to make sure that all the ones you're putting in the bowl are kind of the same size, roughly. Okay. So, and I'm going to cut this one too. And I'm going to cut these ones. All right. So once you've got your potatoes in, now you're going to mix it all together. So I need a big spoon. 1 second. Oh. All right, so you want to get yourself a spoon, and this is why you need a big bowl, so that it's easy to mix all of this and get everything really well covered with the marinade. If you've got a small bowl, things are going to fall out and make it a little tricky. So if you can they see what I'm doing on the board? Yeah. So if you'll see, as I'm mixing, where? Oh, on there. Okay, great. Okay. So you see, you want to keep stirring until everything is really well covered with that marinade. You don't want any of the marinade left in the bowl. So keep mixing and mixing until it all is really, really well covered with that marinade. There we go. So you can see it's all looking pretty red. Now you can do this ahead of time. So you can even do this like, you know, the morning or the night before. You can make it up to this point and just cover it and stick it in the fridge for, you know, up to 24 hours. And that actually makes it a really good flavor. Or even if you could just do it like an hour before, and you can leave it, cover it and leave it out at room temperature for an hour. And that just helps the flavors develop a little bit more, but it's totally okay if you don't. So it's a pretty flexible recipe. If you know you're gonna not have time, make it the night before and just stick it in the fridge. The only thing is if it comes straight out of the fridge and you're cooking it, it might take a little longer, because when chicken's cold out of the fridge, it just takes slightly longer to cook because the internal temperature takes longer to cook through. So that's the only difference if you have it in the fridge overnight. All right, so this is looking good. So now we're going to put it onto the sheet pans and get it into the oven. So the important thing with a sheet pan recipe is that you only have a single layer. And I know Lynna did one sheet pan recipe already, because if you, let me give you an example. If you pile things on top of each other, so if you, like, for instance, if I had these chickens on top of the potatoes like that, the potatoes would steam instead of roasting. And what we're trying to do is get the potatoes roasting so that everything's nice and crispy. You have a question? Oh, great. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm probably going to put this on 2 sheet pans, just making sure that everything is really spread out. So just make sure that if your pan is getting too crowded, just get another sheet pan. And again, with this, I've got parchment paper on this sheet pan. It just makes cleanup a little easier and it doesn't stick so much. If you had a really good non-stick sheet pan, you don't need the parchment paper, so don't worry about it. And even if you don't, it's fine. It might mean that you just got to soak it a little bit before you can clean it up properly. So that's about right. You don't want it too crowded, because the idea is you're roasting, and whenever you're roasting anything, meat or vegetables, if you have your sheet pan too crowded, then it starts to steam and it doesn't get nice and crispy, and the goal is to get crispy. So that's one. I'm going to start the other one. There we go. Is everybody okay? If I'm going too fast, let me know.
Melissa, is the chicken supposed to be skin side up? Looks like it.
Yes. So good question. So the reason the chicken is skin side up, we're not going to turn it over. It's going to be skin side up the whole time. And that is so that the skin and the fat that's underneath the skin is going to melt into the chicken and make the chicken really flavorful. And then the skin's going to get nice and crispy. So we're going to leave it skin side up the whole time. Okay. And then when you get to the end, if you've got any marinade left in your bowl, just pour it out. You want to get all that goodness onto your chicken. So any marinade that's left in there, just if you have a spatula, or just scrape it out and get it on top of your chicken. There we go. And again, because I've been touching raw chicken, I'm going to wash my hands again. Okay. All right. So has everyone got their chicken on their sheet pan? Because now we're going to get it into the oven. And so you want it on about, depending on how many sheet pans you have, you want it in the kind of middle of the oven. If you've got 2 sheet pans, try and sort of keep them as far apart from each other. So one at the top and one at the bottom, because we'll swap them halfway through. Again, when you're roasting more than one sheet pan, if they're really close together on 2 shelves that are close together, they're going to steam more than roast, and we don't want the steaming. I mean, it's still going to be cooked and it'll taste fine, but we're trying to get it nice and crispy. So I'm going to put these 2 in the oven next to each other. Let's do that. There we go. And once they're in the oven, and Lynna's going to put hers in, 2 more. All right. So, and then once they're in the oven, we're going to set a timer, because what we're going to do is halfway through, we're going to add the leeks to the chicken and the potatoes. So set a timer right now for 25 minutes. So can one of my assistants
set a timer for 25 minutes?
Okay, so we have a timer. So everybody get your chicken in and set a timer for 25 minutes. Has everybody got that? Any? Okay, yeah, so if you're putting your chicken in now, we're all going to be on the same timer, so that's good. And one thing I'll add about cooking, it's amazing that you're all cooking in this heat. I assume you're all sweating like we are at 85 degrees. But I will tell you a story about, I used to work in restaurants. I had a restaurant in England. And if you've ever been or seen chefs in a professional kitchen, you will see that they always wear quite heavy clogs on their feet, special clogs that chefs wear that are really hard and protect your feet. So when you're cooking, you should always, I'm saying this because it's so hot, because right now I have bare feet, which I should not have. And when you're cooking, I would advise you always to wear shoes that cover your feet completely. Do not wear sandals and don't cook with bare feet. And I learned this the hard way when I worked in a restaurant in London, in England, where I used to live. I worked for a very famous chef. He was like a TV celebrity chef. And his kind of thing that he did was he would cook in sandals, like thong flip-flop things. We call them flip-flops in England, which is very dangerous, and no chef would ever do that. And while I worked for him for 2 years, one time he ended up with a knife through his foot because he dropped a knife when he was cooking. And this is a professional chef. His knife slipped and went into his foot. He still kept wearing his sandals. And then another time he was cooking and he was cooking at the stove and he splattered hot oil all over his feet and burnt his feet really badly. So that's just a lesson learned. Never ever cook in bare feet or sandals. So if you haven't got shoes on, don't worry too much today because we're not cooking with hot oil, but just something to remember. Okay, so now we're going to prepare our leeks, which are going to go on top of the chicken and the potatoes halfway through. So the reason that I know Lynna asked everybody to wash everything beforehand, but I think she said don't wash your leeks, because leeks is something that you have to wash in a particular way. Otherwise you end up with little pieces of grit in the food, which just tastes really nasty. It's like eating sand. So if you can see, and some leeks have more grit and dirt in than others, but I'm just going to start with one. And so if you get your leek, you can just wash the outside. Actually, don't worry about that for right now. First of all, we're just going to cut the ends off. So depending on how many leeks, 1 leek is fine. If you have 2 smaller ones, just cut the ends off. And then the green bits, we're not going to use the green bits. So you want to cut the leek about right here. You can use a little bit of the green. So we're going to cut right here. It's very tough. Some leeks are really hard. So you can see it's tough to cut through. These we don't need. These green bits, if any of you make your own stock, what I do at home is I keep a Ziploc in the freezer with chicken bones, if we have a roast chicken, and bits of vegetable, like when I'm chopping onions, carrots, and these are good too. So I would keep these and make stock with them. So I keep what's called a stock bag in the freezer, and then you make your own really good chicken broth, chicken stock. So we're gonna cut the green bits off, which is tough. And you'll see already, can you see all the dirt? Most leeks are really full of mud like that and grit, which is good because it shows that they're fresh. But the problem is, and I don't know if you can see inside this leek, you can see the mud right inside the leek. So if you just rinsed it on the outside and chopped it up, you'd get all this mud inside your dish and it would be really gritty. It's going to be like eating sand. So to prevent that, what we're going to do, so you can see that mud in there, I'm going to cut it in half. Be careful doing this because the leeks are hard to cut. So just see where my fingers are here? Keep your fingers away from the knife. And we're just going to cut it in half like that. And then I'm going to cut it in quarters. So turn it face down and then just cut it into quarters like that. Watch your fingers. Just take your time. You don't need to do this in a hurry. And I'm going to do the same with the other one. The tricky bit is when it's whole like this, because it can roll around. So just hold it tight with your fingers, or have someone hold it for you. And just carefully cut it down. Weirdly enough, you're more likely to cut yourself with a blunt knife than a sharp knife, because blunt knives tend to slip more. So if your knives are getting blunt like mine at home is, I'm going to take it into a store. A lot of stores now, grocery stores, you can leave your knives and get them sharpened, and then you actually end up cutting yourself less. So now we want to rinse these out. So you'll see if you start, you can peel away. I don't know if you can see with the light, but as I'm holding this up, I can see this mud. You see the mud right here? It's all in there. Mainly at the top end, it gets less and less as you get down to the root. So what I'm going to do, and I don't know if we can get the camera on the tap, maybe not. Can we do that? Because this is the best way to do it. Can you get the camera on? Is that on there? Okay, so you want to keep your tap running, and you're just going to hold the leek in your hand. We're going to cut them up later, so don't worry if it all falls apart. You can't see it? Yeah? Okay, so you want to hold it under the tap and just rub the mud away with your fingers, and just sort of separate the leaves, the little sections of the leek, and just rub it so that you're getting rid of all that mud. And as you get towards the center of the leek, there's going to be less. And you can hold it from the root end, because there's not going to be any down that end. It's all at the top end. So we're going to do that with all of them. So hold it from the root end and just rinse it off to get all that mud out of your leeks. You know, it's not going to kill you if you get obviously mud in your dish. It just might taste a little crunchy. So I'm just going to rub. Use your fingers just to rub away any dirt that you can see. And just take your time. All right. And some of you might have leeks that aren't dirty at all. It just depends. Some are worse than others. All right, there we go. Okay, do we need to get the camera back? There we go. All right, so now we're gonna chop the leeks up, and you need a medium bowl to put them in. So you wanna, we good? There we go. So we're gonna chop our leeks and just get them into a bowl. You wanna actually, before we chop them, dry them off a little bit. So I'm gonna get a towel and just dry them a little bit, because again, when you're roasting any vegetable, you don't want them to be too wet, because again, it prevents them getting crispy if you're trying to roast something that's a little wet. They don't need to be totally dry, but you can easily use paper towels or a kitchen towel and just kind of dab them a little bit just to get most of that water off. And then we're good to chop them up. I'll take that off. Okay, so now we're going to chop these up. And again, this does not have to be perfect. These leeks are going to go over the top of the chicken and the potatoes. So it doesn't need to be perfect. So don't worry about getting them all exactly the same size. And I'm just going to do a few at a time. And you can do as a few at a time, one quarter at a time, whatever is easiest for you to do. So see these end, I've still got a little bit of root on here, so I'm just going to get rid of that. I don't know if you can see that that's still a little bit of the root of the leek. I'm just going to throw that bit away. You don't want that bit because that's tough. So we're going to get rid of that. And then for the rest of it, we're just going to slice them. So you see the way I'm holding this bunch of leeks together. I'm holding that pretty tight, because the tighter you hold it, the easier it is to cook. If it's really loose like this, they can slide all over the place. So I'm holding this bunch as tight as I can in my left hand, or if you're right-handed, left-handed the other way. So then I'm going to slice it, and you'll see I'm doing them about 1/2 inch, so not super thin. You can see the size of the slices, about 1/2 inch. There we go. And then when each batch, just stick them in your sort of medium-sized bowl that hopefully you've got right there. And then we're just going to keep chopping all the others about the same. You see these ones, again, I've got a little bit too much root on the end, which I don't want. So we're just going to keep chopping. And this is going to seem like a lot of leeks. You're going to be like, oh my goodness, I don't even like leeks. This is going to taste weird. But you'll see leeks are a bit like spinach in that what seems like a lot when it's raw shrinks down to almost nothing. So when we put this on top of your chicken, again, you're going to think, oh my goodness, that's way too much. It's just going to taste like leeks. But I promise you it won't. And you'll see what happens at the end. So, I mean, what I'm doing now, you're going to think, oh my gosh, this is just crazy. But bear with me. Just keep doing what might seem way too much leeks. And also leeks are pretty mild. Even people that don't like onions like leeks, because although they come from the same family, they're a lot milder than onion. So it just gives really good flavor with not being an overpowering taste. Okay. So just keep cutting that up. Take your time. Leeks, you know, they are kind of slimy and slippery. So just obviously when you're cutting, you see I'm holding the bunch, keep holding it tightly. And as I cut, I'm moving my hand slowly back along the leeks. So I'm not going to be chopping the top of my finger off. I know you're all probably knife experts after weeks of Lynna, but it doesn't hurt to keep reminding yourself how to do it. Okay. All right, so that's all the leeks. I'll just give you everybody a minute to catch up and get your leeks in the bowl. All right, just going to rinse my hands. Okay, is everybody good with the leeks? Everyone got their leeks in the bowl? Not yet? Okay, I'll give you some more time. Just no rush. Yeah, whenever you're chopping anything, just take your time, do it slowly. Mostly when I cut myself cooking, which I still do, even though I worked in restaurants for years, and is usually when I'm in a hurry. So just take your time when you're cutting anything. All right. So next we're gonna season, because although we're sprinkling the leeks over the top of the chicken and the potatoes, we need to season them as well. The thing about cooking any dish is you need to make sure you're seasoning not just at the beginning, but in the middle and the end, and every ingredient that goes into a dish, whether it's a hot dish or a cold dish or a salad, make sure everything you put into the dish is also seasoned. Because some people just think, oh, if I just season the sauce, that's enough. But you need to season everything you're putting in the sauce before you cook it. And the same with a salad, you know, or like carrots or celery that you're dipping into a sauce, you can actually sprinkle a little bit of salt on the carrots and the celery, so that you get a really well seasoned dish. Okay, so now we're going to season the leeks. So what we're going to add is, the first thing we're going to add is the zest of 1 lemon. You guys see me? So you get your lemon. Some lemons, depending on if they're organic or not, have a wax surface to them. So it's really important to rinse off your lemon just to get rid of that. So I'm going to rinse my lemon. I'm going to rinse it and just dry it off. This one actually we grew in our garden, so I know it doesn't have wax on it. So but still, it's just a good habit to get into, because you never know where the lemons have come from. So what we're going to do is we want the zest of one lemon on top of our leeks. So I'm using a microplane, which hopefully you all have, something like this. You can also use the small, if you have a box grater, you can use the small, you want to try and use the smallest microplane that you have because you want the zest to be as fine as possible. So if you have a small, any box grater, use the smallest holes, or a microplane, the smallest holes. So the easiest way to do it, if you have a microplane, is to just put it on top of your bowl, and then you're not, I mean, you can hold it and hold it up in the air like this, or you can put it on your bowl, whichever feels easiest for you to do. And I see some of you, I think Taryn has a little hand zester, which has the little holes, and that you're, exactly, so then you have to hold it and brush it along the lemon. So we're gonna go like this. The important thing when you're zesting a lemon is stop there. Can you see I've got to the white bit? You don't want to zest the white bit of the lemon. You only want the yellow bit. So don't zest too much. When in doubt, just do a little bit, because if you put a lot of that white rind, it's more bitter, and you only want the yellow rind, not the white. So when you're zesting, just use a fairly sort of light hand, and you'll see the way I'm doing it. I'm just zesting a little bit. I'm twisting it around. So I'm just getting the yellow, and I'm not getting too much of that white. So if I turn this over, you can see what's coming out the other side is yellow, it's not white. So if you want to check your microplane right now and just turn it over and make sure you haven't got too much white. If you've got some white there, just don't press so hard and just zest a little more lightly, because you just want the yellow, not the white. Again, if you have some white, it's not a big deal, but it can be a little bitter if you have a lot of that white in there. So I'm just going to keep going. Keep getting the whole zest of that lemon. Okay. And then I'm just sort of twisting my lemon, and I can see the bits that I haven't done yet. So I'm just kind of moving it around to get all that lemon, the goodness of that yellow rind, not the white. Okay. And then save this lemon, because we're going to need the juice of this later. So just keep this next to your board, because we're going to need some of this lemon juice to make our yogurt sauce later. So that's pretty good. I've got most of that. So then I'm just going to tap this to get all that rind in there. And then you can use a spoon or your finger just to get all of that. Another tip is, when you're zesting any kind of citrus like orange, lime, or lemon, there's a lot of really yummy oil that comes out as well as the zest. So if you zest, like if I'd done this on a chopping board and I had a pile of zest on my chopping board, and then I picked it up and put it in here, I would lose a lot of the oil, which is where a lot of the flavor is. A lot of the oil would be soaked into my chopping board, which I don't want. So when you're zesting citrus, try and do it straight into your bowl or onto like a ceramic plate that's not going to absorb the oil, and then you get all the yummy oil in here, which gives you the flavor too. So that's your lemon zest. And the next thing you're going to add, I'll wait till everyone's got their lemon in there. So remember, just keep the lemon next to you, because we're going to use that lemon for juice later. So just keep that nearby. And if you need lemon zest and you don't need lemon juice immediately, you can wrap this up in plastic wrap, and it'll keep in the fridge for like a week, because you don't want to, you might need some lemon juice, and there's no point wasting all that juice just because you only need the zest for something. All right, has everybody, most people got their zest in there? Yeah. Okay, so we're now going to add half a teaspoon of salt. Again, salt is to taste. Always remember that. It's like, if you like something salty, I'll put a little bit more. So about half a teaspoon. I'm going to put a little bit more because I have a lot of leeks. So salt, and about 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil. Again, that's going to make it roast nice and crispy. We have olive oil on the chicken and the potatoes, so we just want to get some olive oil on this. So again, I'm going to use not really good olive oil that you save for your vinaigrette, but this is cooking olive oil. So I'm going to put, 1.5 to 2, just depending on how many leeks you have. So that goes on there. And then a little bit of black pepper as well. So just a few grinds, again, to taste. You like black pepper, put lots in. If you don't want it, don't put it in. You know, cooking is all about learning what you like and what you don't like. So as you cook, experiment, add more of something, less of something, and you very quickly figure out what you like. How much salt? Salt, again, about, depending on how many leeks you have. So for this amount of leeks, I put a 1 teaspoon. You can put anything from 1/2 to 1 teaspoon, depending on how many leeks you have and how much you like salt. I mean, when I cook, you almost can't over salt. I find a lot of the time food in restaurants and generally is under salted. So don't be afraid of salt. And if any of you, I know Lynna's probably already talked to you about this, but if you're really interested in cooking and you want to learn how to cook, there's a cookbook written by a really good friend of Lynna's called Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, which explains exactly how important salt is in cooking. And if you read that book and no other cookbook, you'll be an amazing cook. It's an incredible book that teaches you really the basics of cooking and flavors. So if you're really into cooking, here it is. Here it is. Hang on. It's an amazing book which you can read. How do I? Which you can read from cover to cover, and it teaches you. This is like going to cooking school for a year. It's a really amazing book. It also has some great recipes which are simple and easy to cook. So I highly recommend that if you're interested in cooking, just to learn some more just about the basics. All right. So now we have our leeks and seasoning. So we're just going to toss this with a spoon. Just to, or a fork, whatever you have, just to get.
Excuse me, how much
Yes.
olive oil do I add?
Oh, olive oil, about 1.5 tablespoons, or 1 to 2 tablespoons, depending on how much leeks you have. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. See, I've got some weird long bit of leek that found its way in there, so I'm just going to take that out. But again, this is similar to the potatoes. As long as the leeks are all more or less the same size, so they cook evenly, that's what you're looking for. Because when you're roasting stuff together, you just want things to be about the same size. All right. And sometimes when you've got lemon zest in something, it can get clumped together. So you want to mix this fairly well so that the lemon zest really gets spread out. Because you'll see, let me show you this. You see, lemon zest tends to stick together. So you see, I've got a big chunk of lemon on one piece of leek, which I don't want. So you really want to stir this as well as you can to separate out that lemon zest so it's just evenly distributed over all the leeks. So you're not getting, you know, that if you ate that piece of leek, you'd have a huge burst of lemon, which might not be that bad, but you want to try and spread this out as much as you can. So this is about ready. And we've got 2 minutes left on our timer, which is perfect because we're gonna, in 2 minutes, we're gonna take the chicken and the potatoes out of the oven carefully. So that's where, if you want your parents to help you lift the chicken out and add this. But before we add this, we're going to just turn the potatoes over so that they get roasted evenly on both sides. So just keep mixing this until it's really well. See that lemon zest is all really spread out now. So that is ready to go. So what you want to do is clear your surface so that you have space to move your chicken onto your surface, because we're going to take the sheet pans out of the oven and we're going to add the leeks. So just make sure you have enough space for that. So I'm going to move my leeks out of the way. There we go. And the reason, I can't remember if I said this already, but the reason we're adding the leeks halfway through is if we put these leeks cook quite quickly. So if we put these on at the beginning, they would be completely burned before the chicken and the potatoes were ready. So this is why we're adding them slightly more than halfway, so that they don't get overcooked and really burnt and crispy. So if you all, did everybody put, I think most people put their chicken in at the same time. So most of your timers should be, I have 42 seconds. Does everyone have about that same amount left on their timer? Almost there at 25 minutes? Okay. And one thing I am going to do is I don't know if you noticed when Lynna put her chicken breasts in, they were much bigger than mine. So I'm going to leave Lynna's in for about an extra 10 minutes before I add the leeks to hers, because otherwise her chicken breasts are going to take probably 10 minutes longer to cook because they're much bigger. And I don't want the leeks to burn. So I'm just going to put the leeks on top of my chicken breast right now. So the same thing, if you have, I'm going to show you, I'm going to take one of hers out and show you the difference in size. If you have really, really big chicken breasts, then you want to just leave them in for another 10 minutes before you add the leeks. So I'm just going to take 2 trays out so you can see the difference in the size. All right, so these are the ones that I did. And these are Lynna's. So you can see the difference in the size. So you see these ones, these chicken breasts, some of them are almost double the size of like this one. It's like this breast is like double the size of this one. So we don't want the leeks to burn. The potatoes, you know, they'll be okay going in for a bit longer. So I'm going to put these big ones back in the oven for another 10 minutes. So can you guys set me a 10-minute timer? And I'm going to take the 2 trays out with the smaller breasts, and we're just going to, before we add the leeks, we're just going to roll what you want to do is turn your potatoes over to the other side. So just so they get evenly cooked. So you want to kind of get a little spoon, or sometimes it's easier with 2 spoons or a spoon and a fork. And you just want to turn each potato over to cook on the other side. So again, take your time. Obviously it's hot, be careful. So use a spoon and a fork, 2 forks, a knife and a fork, and just very carefully turn each potato onto its reverse side. And then they're going to cook evenly. And like you see, I've got quite a lot of marinade in the middle and less on the outside. So I might just move my potatoes around so that the ones that don't have any marinade on them can get some of that goodness of the flavor of the marinade. So that's 1 tray. And then again, yeah, just do the same. Take your time. And, you know, this dish, it will vary depending on, you know, some potatoes, depending on the kind and how fresh they are, will cook longer than others. So we may get to a point later where the chicken is cooked or the leeks are cooked and something else isn't. But again, it's not the end of the world, because sometimes I might take the chicken out and let it rest and then put the potatoes in for a little bit longer if they're not quite cooked. So everything is fixable in cooking. If something doesn't work out quite how you expected, there's nearly always a way to fix it, so don't panic. All right, so I've turned all the potatoes over, and then we're going to get the leeks, and you're going to sprinkle the leeks just roughly over the top of everything. Doesn't matter where they go. And you'll see it seems like a lot, and I'm just going to sprinkle it evenly over. Lynna, did you do more leeks? No, okay. So I'm just going to use half of these, and Lynna's going to use the rest on her chicken. So you're going to probably have more leeks on yours than this. And don't worry if it's completely covered in leeks. That's totally fine. So I'm going to save these for Lynna's, but you keep going. Use up all your leeks, and if it's totally covered with leeks, that's fine, because what's going to happen is as they cook, these leeks shrink down and they disappear. You're going to see after another 20 minutes, you're going to be like, what happened to all my leeks? So don't be afraid. Just put them all on there. There can't be too many. All right. So then I'm going to wash my hands. Okay. And we're going to put that back in the oven for 20 minutes. And then after 20 minutes, we're going to check and see how cooked everything is. And we may have to put it in for a little bit longer. And that's just, again, always with cooking. You start off with a goal of timing, and then you check it, and it might be, you may need another 10 minutes. It's never, and it might work out different on different days. So don't worry about that. So we're going to put these back in. And we're going to cook these for 20 minutes. So can I get a second timer for 20 minutes? Is that possible? All right. So what we're going to do now is make, so that's basically your dinner. We're going to do a side salad as well. But what we're going to make a yogurt and herb sauce, which is going to go over the chicken and the potatoes. So what you need is a small bowl. Lynna, can I get another? Okay. You want a small to medium bowl, and we're going to make our yogurt sauce. It's probably a word I say strangely. I think you guys say yogurt. Is that right? I don't know. In England, we say yogurt. So I'm using Greek, but it doesn't have to be. If you have just plain yogurt, that's fine. It can be Greek yogurt. It can be mixture of the both, whatever. I mean, obviously, if you use non-Greek yogurt, it's just going to be a little bit runnier, but it doesn't matter. It's totally fine, whatever you have. Just plain yogurt, nothing flavored, no vanilla or anything else. So we are going to, one second, can I get another spoon? Thanks. Thank you. All right, so I'm using, again, how much of this you make is totally how much you like yogurt. Some people don't want yogurt on this dish at all. What's nice about it is that when you use a yogurt sauce on anything spicy, it cools down the spice. So if you're using a really spicy harissa and you're eating this dish and you're like, oh, I can't take this, it's too hot, it's too spicy. If you put lots of yogurt on, that counteracts the spice. So that's why you have the yogurt sauce with this dish, to kind of counteract the spiciness. So if you're not using harissa, you might not even want the yogurt sauce. So it's, again, it's totally up to you. So I'm going to make, I'm making enough for, I'm doubling because Lynna, we're making enough for 2 families. So I'm going to use 2 cups of yogurt. So you can either use 2 cups or 1 cup, however much you like. So you want to start with that. Oops, paper on there. Yeah. Okay, so that's in there. And then to that, you're going to add lemon juice. So you need your lemon. You remember that we zested, and just cut your lemon in half. And you can either use a juicer, or if you don't need that much, if you don't want to get the seeds in and you don't have a juicer, if you hold it this way up, so when you squeeze it, the juice kind of goes through your fingers, but the pips aren't going to drip into the bowl. So this is, if you don't have a juicer, this is just a way to get lemon juice without ending up with the seeds in your bowl. So I'm just squeezing it, holding it this way up. And I'm going to put in this, again, it depends how juicy your lemons are. You probably want about 1 to 2 tablespoons, depending on how much yogurt you have. So you'll see in this, this is quite juicy. So I'm probably just going to do half a lemon. That's going to be enough. So again, I'm just going to save that for another time. Rinse my hands off. Okay. And then we are going to add garlic. And again, garlic is, some people don't like it, especially raw garlic. Some people find too strong. So if you don't like raw garlic, don't put this in. And what I actually do at home is, because I personally find, I love cooked garlic, and I find the flavor of raw garlic a little too strong. So at home, what I do is I roast garlic cloves like this. You can roast them, you can just roast them in their skins like this, in a sort of medium oven with some olive oil. And then I just keep the roasted cloves in the freezer. And if you grate roasted garlic, it's much milder than raw garlic. You still get the garlic flavor, but it's much milder. So I keep frozen roasted garlic cloves in my freezer to use instead of raw garlic, because I find the taste of raw garlic too strong. But so if you want raw garlic, just take the peel If you know, the way to peel garlic, I'm sure you've done this with Lynna, is to press down lightly crush it, and then the skin comes off a lot easier. But you don't want to completely smash it because we're going to be grating it, so you want something to hold on to when you're grating it. So I'm just going to put that question. No? Okay. So I'm just going to put a little bit of garlic into mine. So we are using, I'm just going to rinse off my zester. I'm going to use the same one that I used for the lemon. I'm just going to rinse that and dry that off. And just grate as much garlic or little as you want, or no garlic, whatever you like. So I'm just going to put whatever you like into there. Yeah. And again, just tap the edge and wipe that off. Okay. And then you might want to rinse your hands if you've got garlic all over them, because your hands are just going to be all smelly. Okay, so the next thing we're going to add is olive oil. Now for this, because this is a yogurt sauce, you're not cooking it, you want to use your slightly better olive oil if you have some. So I'm using this California extra virgin olive oil, which I'm going to use to make the vinaigrette. And I'm going to add, again, depending on how much yogurt you put in here, I'm going to put about 1 tablespoon of olive oil. So not a huge amount, just a little bit like that. Again, this doesn't have to be totally exact. So a tablespoon of olive oil. Okay, now my 10-minute timer has just gone off. Which you can ignore because that's Lynna's. Remember, her chicken breasts were bigger, so we're just going to take those out and add the leeks to Lynna's. All right, so far we have yogurt, we have garlic, we have lemon juice, and we have olive oil. And
No.
Question? Are we good? Okay. And add about ½ a teaspoon of salt. Okay, I've got 2 cups of yogurt. I'm going to put about ½ a teaspoon of salt. So if you've got 1 cup of yogurt, just put like a ¼ teaspoon of salt. And then one more ingredient, depending on what you have. We're going to add fresh herbs to this. And you can use whatever herbs that you like. So you can use mint, parsley, chervil, tarragon, dill, what else? What I call basil, but I think you guys call basil. So any fresh herb that you like can go into this, whatever you have, or a mixture of all of them. So whatever you happen to have, or whatever you like. So I'm going to use, we happen to have a lot of mint in our garden. So I'm going to use, and I like a lot of mint in this. So I'm going to use quite a lot. I washed this already. Mint is one of those herbs that I just washed just before this, because you can wash things like parsley and keep it in the fridge for a few days, but mint tends to go, mint and basil are the 2 herbs that you want to wash just before you use them, because they go black. If you keep washed mint and washed basil in the fridge, they'll go black. The other way to keep them is if you have the stems still on, to keep them in a glass of water with the stems, you know, like flowers. But you just don't want to wash them a long time before you're going to use them. So, yes? What? Oh, as an example? Hold on. There we go. So you see, this is how Lynna's keeping her herb. She's got basil in there, just keeping it fresh. That's the other way to keep it. All right, so I've got mint, and I'm also going to put some parsley in there. So you guys use whatever you happen to have. You can use whatever you want. And again, if you like lots of herbs, just put lots in there. And it's totally to taste, whatever you like. And if you have extra chopped herbs, you don't need to put them all in the yogurt. Or if you don't like yogurt, you can just chop up the fresh herbs and sprinkle those over the dish when you serve it. So if you don't like the yogurt, just do the herbs by themselves. So then you still get that nice freshness. If you don't want, or if you can't eat dairy, just use fresh herbs and no yogurt. And if you're not, yes, yes. Question?
Our Wi-Fi went out. How long are we supposed to put the chicken in after we put?
Oh, 20 minutes. We're going to check it after 20 minutes. So after you put the leeks on, you want to put it back in the oven for 20 minutes, and then we're going to check it and see what it looks like.
Oh, and how much olive oil do we add to the yogurt and the herbs?
About a tablespoon. About a tablespoon of olive oil. Okay. All right. So we're just going to chop up the herbs. And if you are just putting, if you're not using the yogurt and you're just putting the herbs on top of the dish without it, you want to put a squeeze of lemon juice over as well. Because if you read that book, you'll understand the two most important ingredients when every dish that you cook is salt and acid. Because you can add salt to a dish and it really helps the flavor. But if then you add acid as well, it just brings the flavor up. It brightens it and it just brings all the flavors out. So in this dish, we're using the lemon juice and the yogurt as acid. But you can use other things like a splash of vinegar. Like if you make a soup or a stew and you put all your seasoning and you still think, something's missing, just add like a half lemon juice, a couple of tablespoons of lemon juice or a splash of vinegar, and you'd be amazed at the difference in the flavor. And just play around with it. You know, just put it in and taste it before and after and see what difference it makes. And if you're interested in really understanding why, if you read that book, it explains, it's a really good book. And it explains how important that is to the flavor of food when you're cooking. All right, so these don't have to be really, really fine. You can chop it roughly. It doesn't have to be that small. All right. Whew, I don't know about you guys, but I'm really hot. You're all amazing to be cooking today. Yeah. At least we're not frying anything, thank goodness. All right. So you see it's pretty roughly chopped. I'm not, I feel like I'm a boxer. I need someone rubbing my forehead to keep me cool. All right. There we go. So that looks about right. It's roughly chopped. So we're going to add that, and I don't know if Lynna's probably gone over this too, but when you're chopping, when you're using a knife, obviously be careful if you're using a knife to lift anything off a board to put it into the bowl. And the other thing to be careful if you're scraping, see some people will do it this way. If you're trying to scrape something off a board like this to get it into your bowl, don't use the sharp side of the knife because that blunts your knives. So if you are going to scrape, use the top of your knife, and obviously be careful because that's sharp, but scrape along the board with the top of your knife so that you're not scraping the blade across the board because that will blunt them if you do this a lot. So I'm just going to scrape, or you can just pick it up with your spoon or your hands. So the other way to do it, so I'm scraping half. The other way to do it is you can lift it gently with the knife and just get it in your bowl like that. Just be careful that you're not touching the sharp blade. There you go. And again, another way people often cut themselves is by doing this. So a lot of people will use their finger to wipe to get the rest of these off, which is totally fine to do, but you've got to be really careful, especially if your knife is really sharp, because if you go like this with your finger like this, you're going to slice your finger. So I'm going to do this, but I'm going to hold my finger this way and keep my skin away from the sharp bit. And again, on this side, you see I'm going from this angle at the back of the knife and just go like that. So I'm staying away from the blade. Okay. So then we're just going to stir this in, and that is your sauce, which you're just going to drizzle over the dish when it's ready. So once you've mixed this in, and again, you can taste this. and always, when you cook anything, taste it and check it before you put anything on the table for yourselves or your guests. Taste, taste, taste. So just taste it, and you'll think, maybe it doesn't have enough salt. Maybe I want more pepper in here. Maybe I need more lemon juice. And but the other thing to check is, for instance, say I had put too much salt on my chicken and potatoes, then what I can do is put no salt in here, because then the creaminess of the yogurt with no salt in will counteract the over salty potatoes and the chicken. So that's the other thing you can do with food, is if one bit, like if you've made a dish that's really salty, serve it with rice that's got no salt in, and then the bland rice is going to counteract the over saltiness of your dish. And the other thing is, if you've over salted something, you can add cream or creme fraiche or yogurt to counteract the salt. You can also put in a couple of pinches of sugar, which will also do that. Okay, so there is your yogurt sauce. So that's ready to go. So we're just gonna, you can put that on your table. So it should look kind of like that. You can put that on the table for when you're serving. So we have about 4 minutes left on our timer for our chicken. So while we're waiting for that to cook, we're gonna make the vinaigrette for the salad. So actually, let's chop the fennel first. So we're just gonna make a green salad with some fennel. If you don't like fennel, obviously don't put that in. If you have anything else you wanna add to the salad, like you've got some cucumbers or radishes or sprouts, whatever you'd normally put in a salad at home, you can just add whatever you like. I like fennel because it just has a little, mild aniseedy flavor. It's not too strong. Again, some people don't like this and they find it too strong. I washed this already, but I'm going to take off the outer leaf because it seems a little bit tough. Just going to rinse that off again. Okay. Okay, so this fennel, fennel when it comes has the long kind of frilly stems. I cut those off already. I'm going to cut a little bit more off. And again, I save those from when I'm making chicken broth or chicken stock. So they'll just go in my stock bag in the freezer, and I'll use those to flavor a stock. And you'll see I've still got some fresh herbs on my knife, but that's okay, because if that goes in the salad, it's all tasty. So with the fennel, if you're using fennel, again, it's a hard vegetable. So watch your fingers when you're cutting this so that it doesn't slip. And what you want to do is first of all, we're going to cut the end off. So this bit is the tough bit. So we're going to slice that off. And you'll see in there, there's a tough center that we don't want. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn it and put it on its base like that. And we're going to cut it straight down across the middle. And then you'll see we have two halves. And we want to cut out that triangle. You see that triangle in there? That's the tough inside of the fennel bulb that you don't want. So let me see if you can see this. I'm going to use my knife. I'm going to hold it like this, and I'm going to cut that triangle out. So I'm going to do one cut like that and another cut like that, and it's just going to pop out. You see that triangle bit? It's just popped out. Can everyone see that? I'm going to do the other one so you can see, and then you can do your own. So hold it like this. So you've got your triangle right there, and you're going to do one cut down one side of the triangle and one cut down the other. And that triangle bit, that tough bit that you don't want, is going to pop out. So we're going to get rid of that. Okay, I'll just give you a minute to do that. And then we're just going to slice your fennel as thin as you possibly can, because fennel it adds a really nice crunch and it's a great flavor, but you want to try and get it as thin as you can. So first of all, we're going to cut it in half lengthways like that. Just hold those two pieces together. And then again, like slicing an onion, hold this really tightly with your fingers. Again, watch your fingers, and just do this slowly, take your time, and just slice this very, very thin, as thin as you possibly can. So get your knife, and it's just going to fall off and almost like little shavings. And it doesn't matter if they're not all perfect, but you just want to get this really, really thin, because it's just a nicer way to eat it when it's raw like this. So fennel is also delicious cooked. You can just kind of braise it, roast it with some salt, pepper, and olive oil, and then the flavor gets even milder. And it's quite a strong flavor, so you might not want a whole bulb, depending on how much salad you're making. You might just want that much, because it's really just a sort of additional to add like a nice crunch to the salad. So I'm just going to put that in the bowl. So, question? Oh, okay, our timer's almost ready, so I'm just going to finish slicing this one. All right. And again, when you get to the end, just stop. If you're worried about your fingers, just don't worry about that bit. So I'm just gonna pick these up and put them in my bowl. So my timer has just gone off to check my chicken. So I'm just gonna put this aside for a minute. I'm gonna carry on this later. And I'm just gonna take the chicken out. So if you just wanna pause with what you're doing right now and take the chicken out, and we're gonna just have a look at it and see if we think it's cooked. And we're gonna check the temperature of the chicken. Do we have a thermometer? Oh. Again, don't worry if you don't have a thermometer. We can tell by looking at it, but it's just an additional way to check. Okay, so I can see, you see, I'm not in my kitchen at home. So I can see this isn't cooked yet. My oven at home tends to be, runs hot. So in my oven at home, this would be cooked. This is not cooked yet because I can see you want it to be really brown and crispy, and it's not yet. So I'm actually going to turn this oven up to 450. But you can either do that or just keep cooking it for longer. But let's just test the temperature. So when you're testing the temperature of chicken, if you have a thermometer, again, don't worry if you don't, because we can just tell by looking at it. This is not cooked, I can tell by looking at it. But I'm gonna put the thermometer, and you wanna put it in the thickest part of the chicken, but you don't want it touching the bone. You want it in the thickest part of the chicken, but not touching the bone. This actually is cooked internally, because when chicken is cooked, it needs to be a minimum of 165. And this is actually, it is cooked inside, but we want the outside to get crispy. So I'm going to turn the oven up to 450, 475, because we don't want to overcook the inside, but I want the outside to get crispy. So if you do have a thermometer and your gauge says 165 or above, turn your oven up to like 450, 475, and just put it back in for 5 to 10 minutes just to crispen up the chicken. And we also want to check our potatoes. So you want to get a knife and just put a knife in, and you can tell, does the potato feel soft the whole way through? Which these do. So it means they're cooked in the middle, but again, I want them crispier. So they will also be fine for another 10 minutes in a hot oven just to crispen up. So I'm going to put this back in. So you guys, again, it's going to depend on your oven. So you can tell by looking at this, and especially if you like crispy skin, just to stick it back in a hotter oven for 5 to 10 minutes just to get it nice and crispy. So we're going to put that, I'm going to put mine back in. Okay. Hey, Lynna, it looks like yours are cooking quicker. Can we swap them over? Thanks. So again, ovens cook differently depending on what shelf they're on. So if you have two trays, one's on the top shelf and one's on the bottom shelf, you'll probably notice that one is cooking faster than the other. So I should have said this halfway through when you add the leeks to swap those trays over to get it cooking more evenly. But never mind, we can do that now. So right now, Lynna is going to move the ones that are on the bottom shelf up to the top shelf and vice versa. We're going to swap them over. Okay. Another 10-minute timer. Thank you. All right, so I'll just give you guys a minute just to check your chicken, see how you think it's doing. And if your chicken is cooked, you can take your chicken off and just leave that to rest on a plate. And if you think your potatoes need a little bit longer, you want them crispier or they're not quite cooked through, you can just take your chicken out, put it on a plate, and then just put the potatoes in for another 5 to 10 minutes. So again, it's all just to taste. So if you like, some people like their potatoes really soft on the inside and really crispy. Some people just want them just cooked. So again, take everything out to taste how you like it, which is the most important thing. So now we're just going to finish making the salad. So I'm going to add a little bit more fennel. I'm probably not going to put the whole bulb in. I'm going to do that. Okay, so now last thing we're going to do is make a vinaigrette. So I'm just going to show you a way of doing it. I think when you made it last time, those of you that were here made it in a bowl with a whisk, which is totally fine. You can do it that way. I'm going to make it, so if you have a bowl on a whisk, you can do that. If you have a jar, it needs to have a tight fitting lid, or any kind of pot, plastic pot, anything with a tight fitting lid, because we're going to shake it. That's how we're going to mix it. What's called emulsifying a vinaigrette. So if you can find either a jar or any kind of pot with a lid that's tight fitting, so if you shake it, it's not going to spill. So we're going to get that. And we're going to just do a basic vinaigrette, and then I'll show you how to add things to it if you want to make it more flavorful. So we are just going to use olive oil, and I'm using red wine vinegar. You can use any kind of vinegar, sherry vinegar, apple cider vinegar. You might have some flavored vinegar that someone gave you, raspberry or tangerine or lemon. You can, whatever you like. So the golden rule with a basic vinaigrette is it's 3 parts oil to 1 part vinegar. And again, that's sort of the basic recipe, but if you find that's too sharp for you, it's too vinegary, then just cut that down. But we're going to start with that, and I'm going to actually double that. So so it would be 3 tablespoons of olive oil. And again, this is where you want to use your good olive oil, the best one that you have, because cooking olive oil doesn't have a great flavor. So any kind of extra virgin. So it's 3 tablespoons of oil, and then 1 tablespoon of vinegar. Okay, and I'm going to double mine, so I'm going to add another 3 olive oil and 1 vinegar. The nice thing about making this in a jar is that if you make more than you need, you can just keep this jar in the fridge and it'll keep for a couple of weeks, if not longer. So then you've just got nice homemade vinaigrette to use all the time. The only time you can't do that is if you can add to this vinaigrette, you can add fresh herbs, you can add chopped shallots. But if you do that, it's only going to keep a couple of days in the fridge, not for weeks. But if you're not adding any other ingredients, then this will keep in the fridge for a while. So you've added your oil and your vinegar, and then we're just going to add seasoning. So again, this is to taste. So for this much, I've got 6 tablespoons of olive oil, 2 vinegar. I'm going to add about 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. But you know, 1/4 teaspoon, again, it depends how much salt you like. I like quite a salty vinaigrette. Some people don't. So again, it's best just to add less, taste it, and then add more, because it's hard to fix a vinaigrette if you've got too salty. So I'm going to add a little bit, and then I can add more later. And then I'm just going to add black pepper, again, to taste. So if you like it, put lots in. And this is the other thing about a jar. If you've got a grinder like this, you see I'm holding it, just sitting it on top, and it's just going straight in. Okay, so is there a question? No?
Of the oil?
Sorry, what kind of oil? Or what was the question?
Extra virgin.
Extra virgin olive oil, yes. Yeah. Okay.
How many tablespoons?
So if you're 3 tablespoons of olive oil to 1 tablespoon of vinegar. Okay, so 3 olive oil, 1 vinegar. And then your salt and pepper. And you can stop right now. If you just want a plain vinaigrette, then that's it. That's what you've got. I'm going to add a couple of other ingredients just to give it a little extra, but you don't have to. If you just want oil and vinegar and salt and pepper, then you can stop right now. I am also going to add a little bit of mustard and a little bit of honey, just to make it a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to add about, this is Dijon. And I'm going to add, because I'm doubling mine, so I'm going to add about a teaspoon of mustard. I would put in more like 1/2 teaspoon or 1/4. Okay. And just that one. Yeah. Okay. Wrong one. And then again, about the same amount of honey, or you could use agave, just liquid. If you use just a caster sugar, that's not going to dissolve, so it might not work so well. So Sonia, you'll recognize we've got your honey here. So I feel very privileged to be using. So I'm going to add again, because I've doubled mine, I'm going to add about a teaspoon of honey. So if you're not doubling it, like half a teaspoon is fine. There we go. Okay. And then once you've got everything in there,
Wait, half a teaspoon of salt?
yes, about quarter to a half a teaspoon. Are you doubling the recipe? How much olive oil? Do you have 3 tablespoons in there?
More like 4.
Okay, well, yeah, about half a teaspoon should be fine. Or you put a little bit less, and then we're going to taste it, and then you can add more if you want more. So when in doubt, add less, and then you can add more after you've tasted it, okay? So once you've got all your ingredients in your pot, you're just going to put the lid on and make sure it's really tight. And now we're going to just make the vinaigrette, which is called emulsifying. So you're just going to shake it really, really hard. And you can turn it upside down as long as you're confident that your lid is on tight. And you'll see it's completely changed color, and that's called emulsifying when you do that to a vinaigrette. And when this, if you're not using all of this and you put it in the fridge, it may split. And then, so when you're going to take it out of the fridge to use it again, let it warm up to room temperature and just shake it again, and then you'll get this nice emulsified vinaigrette. This is super easy to make. So instead of buying the store-bought, you can make a jar like this, and then you've got it in your fridge to use whenever you want it. Lynna's fanning us. I feel like I'm in an Egyptian princess, because Lynna is providing cool air. Okay, so now, as with everything, we're going to taste it. We're going to taste it and see if we like what we've made. And again, this is going to be totally up to you, whatever you like. So I'm just going to taste this. See, mine needs a little bit more vinegar because I like it a little sharper. And it also needs a little bit more salt. And again, this is something, the more you cook, the more you're going to learn about what's missing. And, you know, the first time you're doing it, like, oh, I don't know, just if it doesn't taste too much, try a little pinch more salt first. And then if you taste it again and it still doesn't taste too much, just a little splash more vinegar. And if it's got too much vinegar, you're going to tell that immediately, because it's going to taste really sharp, like on the back of your throat. And you're like, ugh. But remember, this is also going to be spread out over quite a lot of greens. So when you taste vinaigrette like this, obviously don't take a whole spoonful. You just want to lick a little bit, or put a little bit on your finger, because the seasoning is going to kind of spread out over the greens when you have it as a salad. So I'm just going to add a little bit more salt and a little bit more pepper. But again, it's not the end of the world. So if you make your vinaigrette and then you put it on your salad and your salad doesn't taste too much, you can always just sprinkle a little bit more salt and pepper over the top of the greens. So it's not the end of the world. So that is it. So what you don't want to do is dress your salad before everything else is ready. So whatever salad greens you have, you can put those in the bowl. See, I'm going to put the bowl in the shot. So I've got my fennel in here, and I'm going to add, I have a mix of, I have a butter lettuce, and I wash this ahead of time. And a second, I'm just going to, that's looking okay. I wash my lettuce, and when I serve a salad, I like to break the leaves up into bite-sized pieces, so that you're not, when you're sort of eating this with a fork, you don't come up with a huge leaf that's kind of falling out of your mouth. So just break it up into pieces that's easy to eat. So I've got a mix of butter lettuce, and I've also got some fresh watercress. I like watercress because it's a little bitter. It's very good for you too. And it just is a nice contrast to the butter lettuce, which is milder. So you can just add whatever greens you want, but I'm not going to put the dressing on. I don't want to do that until just before we eat it, especially when it's this hot, because it's just going to go all limp and soggy and not very nice. So I'm going to leave that like that until our chicken is ready. So I'm just going to put that to one side, and I'm going to take the chicken out of the oven and check it again and see what it looks like. Okay. All right. So this is looking almost done. I'm actually going to put it in for a few more minutes because I like the skin crispier. The other thing you can do is you can also just put it under the broiler. But if you do that, be really careful because this will get crispy and broil in like 30 seconds. So I like mine a bit crispier, but you'll see, if you look at the leeks, you see the leeks have shrunk down to almost nothing. And you'll see the ones on the edge here are burning already because they cook really quickly. So I don't want to cook this much more because you don't want the leeks to burn. But this could do another 5 minutes. And you'll see now, you see I'm turning over the potatoes one more time because they're nice and brown underneath. So I'm going to turn mine over and put it back in the oven just for probably 2 more minutes. And then the important thing to do with chicken always before you eat it. So I'm going to put this in for 2 more minutes, and then I'm going to take it out of the oven and let it rest for 5 minutes, at least 5 minutes before you eat it, because if you cut into chicken as soon as you take it out of the oven, all the juices come out and you end up with really dry chicken. So you always want to let it rest for a good 5 to 10 minutes. And if you like really crispy potatoes, oh, sorry, I have a question. How much mustard? In the vinaigrette, about quarter teaspoon of mustard and a quarter teaspoon of honey. So I'm going to put this back in. I'm just going to get the other one out and do the same thing with it. There we go. Yeah, so if your chicken is cooked, take it out, put it on a plate to rest. And if you still feel you want your potatoes and your leeks to get really crispy and brown, you can just stick those back in the oven while your chicken is resting. Or if your potatoes are completely cooked how you want them, you can just turn the oven off and put the potatoes and leeks back in the oven with the oven off just to keep warm while your chicken is resting. And while it's resting, you can either just leave it out on a hot day like today or put foil over it just to let it rest. And if you let it rest for 5 to 10 minutes, it's just going to be a lot juicier and a lot more flavorful than if you cut into it straight out of the oven. So I'm just going to turn those over and stick that back for a couple more minutes. And again, with your, different ovens, you're probably going to have things cooking at different speeds and times. Looks good. Yeah, so we're all good. So that is it. And Lynna, where's Lynna? I don't know if Lynna wants to have a chat with you before we do. So thank you very much for allowing me to be your guest chef. I was very nervous, but I've enjoyed it a lot. And if Lynna lets me, I'll come back another time, hopefully. So thank you guys, enjoy. So just enjoy so serve it, just chicken, potatoes, yogurt sauce over the top, green salad on the side, delicious. And I'm gonna hand you back to Lynna to say goodbye. Oh, there's Lynna. Where's Lynna? There she is.
Thank you.
So enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Have fun.
Bye, guys.
Happy Saturday.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Say bye, Asher.
Bye.